For those who haven't been lucky enough to have a PC and play through Half-Life, the game that's won over 50 Game of the Year awards over the past several years, Volition and THQ are hooking you up by putting out Red Faction for the PlayStation 2. Just like Half-Life for the PC, Red Faction's story-driven, and it's basically concentrates a lot on the one-player aspects of the game versus the multiplayer game, which is something that normally isn't seen a lot in console games. Usually the multiplayer is the main focus. As Red Faction's story goes, there's a company called Altor that is basically developing Mars so that people could one day live there. They have been recruiting humans from Earth for a couple years now, and it's kind of odd. They keep saying that if you go to Altor, you'll become rich, and you'll come back after a short stay, but the people that go never come back. Well, one well-to-do young man named Parker decides to rebel against his family, and instead of going to college, he decides to join up with Altor and head to Mars and start mining. After he's there for a while, he starts hearing stories about a strange virus that some of the workers have been coming down with, and rumors begin to circulate that Altor is behind the virus and that they've been purposely injecting the workers with the virus. He doesn't pay a lot of mind to that. He just kind of goes about his duties and just continues working. Eventually, it gets to the point where it all boils over, and a female leader named Eos decides to start up a worker rebellion called the Red Faction. One day, while Parker is at work, and all hell breaks loose. All the workers start revolting, and all of Altor's workers begin shooting the workers that came from Earth. As the rebellion kicks in, he's contacted by Eos, the leader of Red Faction, and Hendrix, a former Altor employee who used to hack computers for them, but is now working on the side of the Red Faction. As the story goes, you come into contact with a lot of the leaders of Altor who you must destroy. You eventually have to try to find an antidote to save the workers, and needless to say, there's a lot of plot twists along the way that keep things interesting. And just like Half-Life, that's the main drive of the entire game. The main technological advance in Red Faction is its GeoMod engine, and I have to admit, when I first heard about it, I was kind of skeptical. I kind of thought it would just be more of a, just a novelty or something like that. But basically what it is that the worlds are completely destroyable. You can shoot a column with your rocket launcher and parts of the column will break off and fall to the ground. And while we've seen this in a lot of other first-person shooters, even Turok 3, where parts of the levels will explode and then you'll be able to go through and go to the next part of the level, the entire game is set up this way. The one-player mode of Red Faction in the latest build that we received spans 20 different levels, but within each level there's at least 4 or 5 sections that you can go through for a total of 63 sections so far. Once you get into a level, you can go, you can play for probably 20 minutes until you hit a new section, and then that section will actually load up. And then when you die, you can return to that section previously. That's, again, very similar to the way Half-Life is set up. The weapons in Red Faction are all fairly traditional. You have your machine guns, you have your grenades, you have your rocket launchers, you have your remote explosives, you have handguns and things like that. There aren't a lot of fantasy weapons, like charged weapons or anything like that you use. You pretty much just stick with the traditional military-type weapons. As far as gameplay is concerned, there's a good bit of variety. You don't just run around and shoot. You also can pilot submarines that fire torpedoes. You can drive in the back of a Jeep and man a gun turret, and in that sense, it's almost like a shooter on rails at times. And you can also pilot a hovercraft that you can take through the caverns and you can shoot people with. When you're playing through the game, you just really don't bust out into rooms and just start taking people out. If you do that, that's a sure way for your game to end quickly. What you want to do is sneak around, very similar to GoldenEye, and kind of peek your head inside a room, assess where the enemies are, what kind of factors are in the room that you could use to your advantage, and then exploit it and take advantage of it. Once you clear that room, then you want to move on to the next one and do the same thing. Jumping out into the room and trying to outgun people is a sure way to die in Red Faction, and thankfully I'm very glad that they decided to incorporate this kind of gameplay, because it definitely gives it a lot more depth, and it makes you appreciate the level design a lot more. The main reason you can't run into rooms with your guns blazing is because the enemy AI is tough. If you run in and just try to outgun them, they'll all hide behind poles or behind boxes, and they'll pop out and just pick you apart until you're dead. Even if you're in a room with a lot of cover, and maybe you're in a room with a bunch of windows, and there's a pole in there you can hide behind, if you hide behind that pole, the enemies will walk around outside the room, find a clear way to shoot you, and light you up. So you really have to be intelligent, you really have to think on your feet, or otherwise you're going to end up gun fodder. Red Faction's graphics are impressive, although they're definitely not the game's best trait. The real-time cinemas have real-time facial animation that goes along with the sync dialogue, and the direction and the camera angles are fairly good. And so far from what we've heard, the voice acting isn't bad either. The only problem that we've seen so far with Red Faction's graphics are the textures. So far they look like they are low resolution, and they're kind of blurry when you get up close, and that might be something that Volition could possibly swap out at the last minute, although I'm not holding my breath. Red Faction's looking to build upon the foundation that was established by Half-Life almost 3 years ago. It's an enormous game, it's incredibly challenging, and it's gorgeous to look at. With its scheduled release next month, there may not be a lot of time to make much changes, but from what we've played already, it's already shaping up to be quite fine.